let's talk honey blocks. Announced at Minecon Live 2019, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you will know that I got very excited because I thought these were going to be coloured slime blocks. And it turns out that they're not. Now obviously I would say this is a little bit of a shame, because I definitely think that adding some form of coloured slime block into the game that doesn't stick to slime blocks but also behaves like slime blocks would be awesome. It doesn't mean that these honey blocks right here aren't also really useful, so in today's video I'm just going to be running you through some of my thoughts on them, some criticisms of them a little bit, but also a lot of the stuff that I like about them as well. Let's begin. The fact that they move entities is obviously quite a big deal because it means that we can actually ride on the flying machines that we create. Look, I'm actually standing on top of the honey block and I am being transported along with this thing, along with my villager, sort of, and along with my armor stand, which if you did this with slime blocks, it simply wouldn't happen. So that means that rideable flying machines are now considerably easier. Now for some very strange reason, the first thing that came to my head with this is that I could build a flying machine that has a bunch of shulkers attached to it and then just create, well, almost like a seeking missile flying machine. It would be nuts. But unfortunately, you can't actually place these shulkers on top of the honey block. Ooh, he actually went inside that. Well, that's very bizarre. Also, apparently causes some pretty major lag spikes, so I'd avoid doing that myself. Now, one thing that I was slightly surprised by is the fact that the honey block only seems to stick to things that are on top of it. It doesn't stick to things that are on the side, even if they are pushed right the way in. For example, if I just push this guy all the way in to the side of the honey block there, you can see that he will be moved forwards, but that's because he's being pushed by that piston there, so that's kind of cheating. If we just retract this thing out of the way and then retract this, you can see it doesn't come with it. So it doesn't actually stick to the sides. Now this isn't a negative, it's just something that I wanted to point out. I thought it was interesting. To me, I assumed that all sides would be sticky. It turns out there's just the top. But with that being said, obviously all sides are slightly sticky because they slow entities down. Kind of. This is a bit of a weird one for me because they slow them down vertically. So if I throw things like this blue wool or this yellow wool down into this thing, you can see that they travel down much slower than they otherwise would. But they seem to keep their horizontal velocity, which leads to some fairly interesting results. If I throw this here, that you can see that glides quite a long way. Actually, if I throw this regular, it lands there. If I throw it onto the honey blocks, it travels downwards incredibly slowly, but as I say, continues at the same velocity that I threw it. I don't know, is that useful? It could be useful. I mean, what if I had something like a creeper, and then I launched them across like this? I mean, it worked briefly, but no, he seems to have lost a lot of his velocity. I wonder if that's because the creeper decided to start walking in this direction. Doesn't actually look like that's the case. If I fire an armor stand in here as a control... yeah, they all go about the same distance. In fact, exactly the same distance. That's a shame, because I like to imagine just a creeper just wall walking all the way across. Now, of course, one thing that is very cool about the honey block is the fact that it isn't actually a full block, which means that this entity is kind of straddling between these two blocks here, which is really useful for item filtration systems. But then again, is it really that useful for that? On the right, we have got a system with chests, and on the left, we have got a system with honey. The chest system is one that we've used for years, and it still works absolutely perfectly. Look, you can see all of the items are making their way into those hoppers there, which are on the edge of the block, and all the items are traveling really fast. It's very nice. With the honey blocks, they do exactly the same thing, but the items just take more time to get down to the bottom. So I don't know if that's a benefit or not. I'm leaning on probably not, to be honest with you. And I think the other thing worth mentioning is that if you're crafting large quantities of honey blocks, it's going to be frustrating, because this is the crafting recipe. So you need to get your honey bottles. That gives you one honey block. Then you need to remove the glass bottles, and then you do it again. So you can only craft them one at a time. That's around about the maximum velocity. And that, by the way, is my only genuine complaint about the honey block. It's if you want multiple stacks of these things, it's just going to take forever. But anyway, let's go back over to the slow falling entities, because I think there are some interesting bits to do here. The thing that I find interesting is that entities placed next to the honey block obviously don't fall slowly. So things like anvils, they're not going to be affected by the honey block, unless of course you fire the anvil into the honey block, which of course I've set up a system right here. If you do a bit of this, you can see that actually it does work, and that is hilarious. And I'm wondering, Because there's some interesting bits to do with anvils. Originally, the speed or the amount of damage that an anvil deals was to do with how long it was falling for. So in theory, this could deal a ridiculous amount of damage because obviously it's falling for ages. Even though it is traveling slowly, it has a really long fall time. So this could be lethal. As you can tell from my voice, I'm not exactly convinced here. So I've set up a controlled chicken. If I hit this button, I mean, surely that's got to kill the chicken. Alright, gradually. It did no damage. Let's do a control. That killed the chicken. My goodness. I mean, I guess we could take this as a positive. Honey blocks making anvils safe since 2019. One definitely cool use for the honey blocks is the slowing down of TNT droppage, because for all of my concrete farms, my tree farms and everything like that, I've had to build redstone based TNT holding chambers, which are scary because if you mess up the timings, it destroys the entire thing. So this is going to be a really easy way to passively slow down the falling of TNT so you can make it explode where you want it to. So if I break those bottom ones, you can see that the TNT travels slowly and then it will explode somewhere in midair. And then if we take out a bunch of them, it will go considerably further down. So this is genuinely really useful, but I am curious to see how it behaves with TNT duplication. Because let's face it, I'm never going to be using this with a dispenser, am I? I'm going to be duping the TNT. And the problem is, unlike with a dispenser, where the TNT kind of pops out with random velocity horizontally, with TNT duplicators, I don't think that's the case. So if we flick the... Oh, no! Whoa, that was close. I mean, I guess you could say that the honey block did slow down the TNT, sort of, in a way. So what if we build a system like this one? I mean, it doesn't slow it down. The TNT literally just glides past the edges of the honey block because it's not being shoved into it. So it has no effect. But I guess there is a way around it, and that is to either launch the TNT into the honey blocks or move the honey blocks into the TNT. I've gone for option number 2, and it works quite nicely. You can see the honey blocks get pushed across, the TNT slows down, it explodes in midair. Everything works quite nicely. There's no complicated redstone timings involved, but there are still inconsistencies. I have tried to iron them out for ages now, and still occasionally the TNT just kind of bugs out and gets confused and then just drops straight the way through. So not really usable. But with that being said, the concept is promising. I'm sure there's someone out there who will be able to make this a lot more consistent. So I would definitely consider this to be a win for the honey block, even though it kind of doesn't look like it. But I do have a bit of a suggestion though that I think will be interesting. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, you'll recognize this one, but I think as well as a sticky piston, there should be a honey piston as well that potentially pushes and pulls entities. That would be cool. But also, it should have some extra functionality to it. In my tweet, I said that it doesn't spit out its block on a one-tick pulse. That could be interesting, but I'm sure there's plenty of other options that could be quite cool. I gotta say, doing this is satisfying. It's massively satisfying. I mean, parkour maps are gonna be filled with these things, and although I don't do parkour, even I'm tempted to play. Anyway, let's try our best to stop fooling around. I've got a few concepts that I want to try out here, making use of the functionality of the honey block. And my first idea is some weird form of travelator. Obviously, with the honey block dragging entities along, including the player, it only makes sense that you use it for some form of player transportation device. With that being said, this is going to be very big, very expensive, and rather slow, which makes it fantastic. Here we have what I think we can all agree is a beautiful looking hallway. I mean, look at it. It is stunning. Just so much detail in the walls. I've really done a good job there. And here we have the thing that's going to transport us through it if all goes to plan. Now, if I update... No, okay, it's failed at the first hurdle. Oh, hold up a second. Whereas slimes are solid blocks, and you can use observers in this sort of formation here, honey blocks are not. Which means that you can't power pistons. We have to power the pistons directly. Right. I mean, that is actually useful, I think. Like, there's certain times where you really don't want things to power pistons. So then you could use honey blocks for that part of the circuit so that you don't have to worry about... If anything, that's actually quite cool, because now we have a transparent alternative to a slime block. but it does mean that if you are making purely honey block creations, they stick to one another, don't they? Hang on, that was me having a brainwave multiple times live on video. So if we build the actual flying machine out of slime blocks so that we can use the powering of the blocks to power the pistons, and then we use the honey blocks just for the part where the player rides, then it does all function, and this build should actually work. So if we update this piston right here, off our little contraption goes, and we can ride through our travelator with all of it opening up and closing up behind us, so it's kind of flush and hidden away. I mean, in a way, that's actually quite cool. Look at it go. That's nice. I actually quite like that. Now, there is one other thing that I'm very, very curious about, but it has hit a bit of a snag in that it seems like they've changed the behavior of armor stands. So now armor stands wearing Frostwalker boots do not actually generate ice, whereas they used to. You see, I wanted to make a self-generating ice path much simpler than the old designs because of honey blocks, but that doesn't look like it's going to be possible. But not one to be defeated, I thought it'd be cool to do a player-powered system. So the player rides on the flying machine and the ice path is generated out the back, but because the honey block isn't a full-size block, no ice is generated. Whereas if we use a full block, for example, a slime block, then we do get ice. Not the best advert for honey blocks. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? Some of this video may have come across as slightly negative, but I can promise you I actually really like the new honey block. I always love new redstone features, and I think some of the features of the honey block are really interesting, but I definitely think there could be more of them introduced. I think right now it's a tiny bit limited, it's a bit of a niche item. I definitely am an advocate for slime blocks and honey blocks not sticking together, but, I mean, who knows? Who knows what Mojang has planned for it? Anyway, I hope that you found this video interesting, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya! I feel like I should say it again, just for good measure, I'm not blasting the honey block. I actually think it's cool. I really do think it's cool. You know what else I think is cool, actually? My latest mini documentary. It's on the filming channel. You can check it out if you want. I wasn't really planning this segue. Okay, I wasn't planning on doing this. It felt so right to me, but now it feels so wrong, but I'm going to leave it in. Just click the link. One.